A very warm welcome. You're watching CNN News 18's Global. I'm Akanksha Swaroop. Now, the October 7 Hamas attack on Israel's unarmed civilians was the deadliest day for Jews anywhere in the world since the Holocaust during the Second World War. Since then, the Israeli offensive against Gaza-based Hamas has also become one of the deadliest of the 5 Israel-Gaza wars for both sides. The total death toll has now crossed 4,000 mark after killing of over 2,700 Gazans and 1,400 Israelis since the attack. Remember, 199 have already been taken as hostage, and US Secretary of State Antony Blinken has been on his second visit to Tel Aviv. And now US President Joe Biden is also set to visit Israel on October 18th. Meanwhile, reports say a 2,000-strong US Marine Rapid Response Force is headed to the waters off the coast of Israel, and the Pentagon is preparing American troops for a potential deployment to the country. The development is bound to escalate Washington's show of force in this region as it works to prevent the conflict between Israel and Hamas from widening any further. After Tel Aviv, Biden will then fly to Jordan. This for talks about accelerating humanitarian assistance to Gaza, where he will also meet Jordan's King Abdullah, Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, and the Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas. It is expected that some sort of humanitarian corridor will be given for aid, even to let Gazans out. Remember that they remain trapped inside Gaza, and it is also expected that post-Biden's visit, Israel will launch its full-fledged operation aimed to eliminate Hamas's leadership and to rescue 199 hostages that were taken away by the terrorists. But how is this panning out geopolitically? Let me break it down for you. Because through the war on Gaza, Israel doesn't realize that they've opened up a new front, as has US, because now you see the teaming up of Russia and China as well. Because remember, today the Russian President Vladimir Putin flew to Beijing this morning to meet his strongest, most crucial ally, the Chinese President Xi Jinping. Bonded by a no-limit partnership, both leaders hope to make most of this war in West Asia. And that's why, despite years of favorable foreign policy towards Israel, now we see both Beijing and Moscow be openly hostile to Israel. What is the geopolitical meaning of these developments? Let me break it down for you. And for that, let me also introduce my guest today. I'm joined in by Miss Tammy Ben-Haim, who's the Consul General of Israel to Southern India. She joins me live. Many thanks to you, Tammy, for joining in. Tammy joins me here. Now, let me begin by asking you about India's Operation Ajay. As we all know that India will be repatriating other Indians who are still stranded in Israel today. Along with those Indians will also be 18 Nepalese citizens who will be repatriated by India's Operation Ajay. I want to begin by asking you about your thoughts on Operation Ajay.
I think first and foremost, I have to say we appreciate India's support of Israel at this very, very harsh time. The unequivocal stance against terrorism and the steadfast support of Israel. And Operation Ajay, I think it's a great initiative of the Indian government. And it shows, Israel cares for its citizens and the people who live in Israel. And the Indian government is the same. The truth is, Israel is at war. We're at war with a terror organization. And war is hard, and war is painful, and war is sad. And if there's a way for Indian citizens not to be in Israel this time, if they don't have a steady job and they can actually come back to India, to their homeland, to their homes, to their families, I think it's a beautiful initiative by the Indian government.
Tammy, let's break it down geopolitically now. Remember, there are also reports that apart from Iran, there's Chinese and Russian involvement as well when we talk about propping up Hamas and the way Hamas has conducted this attack. What are your thoughts?
Look, one, I'll just say that Israel definitely, and we see it now with President Biden's visit and Chancellor Scholz's visit as well, and nobody wants this to escalate. Nobody wants, to give Hamas the prize of once again, taking peace further away and destabilizing the region. Now, about Hamas, Hamas is the #1 funder of Hamas, and not just Hamas, also Hezbollah terror organization in north in Lebanon, and also of the Palestinian Islamic Jihad. Hamas is the known funder, and for years we know that it's funding Hamas, it's training Hamas, it's helping them get weapons from different sources, and it's helping them and teaching them how to make weapons, how to make bombs, how to make rockets. They're taking their commanders and their other terrorists for training in Iran and other places and in the Gaza Strip. Nothing is surprising about this. Nothing is surprising that the Iranian regime is backing, funding, maybe helping guide Hamas. Whether it gave the word on this specific attack or not, I don't think it's the issue at the moment. They've been building Hamas capabilities with the aim that both the Iranian regime share and Hamas terrorist organizations share, and it's also in the Hamas charter, their aim of destroying, of annihilating Israel, of killing Jews and Israelis. And they're very clear about it, Hamas. They're not shy. They've been saying it for years. But I think maybe we never, fully comprehended this. And now it's a wake-up call to us and wake-up call to the world.
All right, Tammy, let's also talk about U.S. assistance now. We know that Antony Blinken, the U.S. Secretary of State, has made a second visit. It is an unprecedented one to Israel. At the same time, we are aware that the U.S. President Joe Biden will also be visiting Israel. The big question remains that at a time when there's already a war going on in Ukraine, can Washington ramp up aid to Israel without jeopardizing aid to Ukraine?
Look, I trust the U.S. is our, biggest ally, our strongest friend, our steadfast supporter. So we appreciate everything they've done so far and everything they are doing and will doing, and definitely this unprecedented visit. There are already talks in Congress about both continuing to assist as they have been the Ukraine and assisting Israel. And we trust them, and they've come through for us every time in the past. And this time, when we're fighting the immediate terror organization that's on our borders and in our country, it's like every other country. When the U.S. also fought terrorist organization.
All right, Tammy, I want you to stay on with us because let me also talk about Gaza, but I'll do that in just a bit. Before I do that, let me also play out a report from Ground Zero as far as Gazans are concerned. Remember, their strip is entirely in a state of war. Gazans are fleeing from place to place in order to find themselves a safe haven. From the Rafah border, this is a report we're bringing to you as Gazans run for safe shelters with no place in sight that remains safe for Gazans.
There is no safety even when you're at the crossing, you're afraid. On our way to the crossing, they shelled Rafah Street and we started screaming. We came to the crossing and thought it was safe. Nowhere is safe in Gaza. Wherever we go, there's shelling, crying, screaming, blood. Seriously, we don't know what we should do. We're coming to the crossing knowing that they won't open it. No aid either. For 8 days, I swear to God. No electricity, no water, no internet. We can't communicate or know what's going on. Seriously, this is not a life.
All right, Tammy, I want to quote what the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said, that, Israel is a state that values human life and it also upholds values of the society. But how Israel chooses to do that is going to matter a lot. So when we talk about breaking the powers of Hamas, do you think Israel can manage to uphold those values and value human life without sort of causing pain and inflicting war on Gaza Strip?
This is what we hope. This is what guides us. We really, first and foremost, our role is and our attempts are to protect the people in Israel, to protect the Israeli citizens and everybody living in Israel. We never, as I said previously, we got out of Gaza. There was no intention of going back, no need for war. Israel has always said that whoever wants to make peace with us, we will make peace with them. We saw it in 79 with Egypt, in 94 with Jordan. We saw it just 3 years ago with the Abraham Accords. We see it now with the talks with Saudi Arabia. So we've been quite serious in our stand throughout these years that we are looking for peace and quiet and security and stability and not war. We will try to do the best we can. Just yesterday, the IDF told, maybe damaging its own strategic upper hand, but it told the population in North Gaza, around Gaza City, please leave your apartments, your houses, your lives are next to or next to or above terrorist structures, terrorist infrastructures, and weapon storages. We need to destroy those. And the IDF gave plenty of time and told the citizens of Gaza to leave. And then Hamas put blockades, trying to get them to stop, trying to get them to stay. Luckily, at the moment, the most majority or majority of the people have been able to go to South Gaza. We will see what we can. Israel also renewed the water supply to Gaza because Hamas, instead of using the solar to run the desalination plant so the people of Gaza can have water, they took the solar into their bunkers and tunnels for their own terrorist use. So Israel opened the water supply. The leaders who are coming into our region, the leaders who are already in our region, are also talking about what can be done. Maybe how can Rafah corridor be open to Egypt? There are many issues being discussed, and I'm sure that Israel will discuss all of them. Our war is with the Hamas. That's it, with the Hamas terror organization, not with anybody else, not with any population, not at all, with a terror organization.
It's quite a relief to hear, Tammy, that you say that Israel's war is with Hamas and that is the terror organization and not with the state of Palestine. But when you say that, one has to also keep in mind the fact that Israel and Gaza both are at war, and that war also happens at the level of psychological warfare. And so important to also keep in mind, will a military victory be enough over Gazans? Will that victory be enough to convince Gazans or the state of Palestine that Israel wants to support human life, that Israel wants to support and upholds the quality and those values of civil society? It's important to, in fact, ask that questions. How will Israel be able to convince those Palestinian civilians that Israel stands up for Palestinians but not for Hamas?
I did not say Israel will take, and I don't know who will control Gaza. Our goal at the moment is to stop the terrorist organization, destroy their capabilities and abilities to launch rockets, to fire rockets into cities, to break into Israel and kidnap children and women. This is what we're stopping. We're stopping their military/terrorist capabilities. We're taking out their commanders who have been part of planning this horrific, barbaric attack. We're not looking at the moment at governing Gaza. We're looking at stopping a terrorist organization.
All right. Now, this is exactly what we're talking about, but at the end of it, Netanyahu has said that Israel would not cooperate with efforts to deliver aid into Gaza. And when you say that, how will Israel ensure that aid, and especially UN aid or humanitarian assistance, is provided, taking into the factor that there has been no ceasefire? Will Netanyahu be willing to sort of assist in that humanitarian aid?
Again, not in Palestine, because the Palestinian Authority is not involved in this incident in the Gaza Strip. Look, Israel has always assisted humanitarian assistance, be it the UN or UNRWA or the European countries or any of the donor countries into Gaza. The sad truth is that we saw what they've done with the millions and billions that they got and the goods that they got for humanitarian support. It did never reach the people. They used it for their own aim of destroying Israel. They used it for their terrorist purposes and not for helping the population. But you're right. Part of this, as our war is not with the population, part of it is seeing how the damage can be minimized, what we can do in order to minimize the damage. But I have to tell you, also on the Israeli side, areas have been cleared out. People from the north of Israel have been moved to the to the center. People from the south where the attack took place have been moved and evacuated from their homes, what's left of their homes, some of them have been evacuated. People are in shelters now, in bomb shelters, because the Hamas is shooting rockets. War is awful. War is hard. War takes a toll on everybody. And it's going to be hard and difficult from both sides. But the only thing I can tell you about both sides is that Israel wants peace and wants security and wants the situation to end. This is what we're asking. I can't speak for a terrorist organization whose mind is driven above all else at destroying us.
Right. And when you talk about this terrorist organization, we all are aware that Hamas was running training camps 1 kilometer within the Israel-Gaza border. How do you assess or weigh in on reports that this has been a massive intel failure on Israel's part? Also, the political unrest within Israel.
We've been, this is not the first, second, or third terrorist attack we're experiencing by Hamas at all. Israel, in its 75 years of independence, has very sadly experienced war and terrorist attack. We don't hear about every terrorist attack that is thwarted or stopped. This was a horrible, I can't, begin to describe the words, what a tragic price we're still paying now with everything that's happening, with the kidnapped children and women and people, with the barrages and barrages of rockets. Your question, let's talk about it after peace is back, after the hostages are back.
All right, Tammy, thank you so much for joining us here at CNN News 18's Global. On that note, it's a quick wrap from my end. But before I do that, let me also bring you some global reactions. Remember, leaders from all across the globe continue to voice their anger, their condemnation towards the war and what Hamas has done, especially in Israel. On that note, let me also play out the reaction of UK's Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Let's listen.
The humanitarian situation is one which, of course, we're concerned about and that I've raised in all the calls and interactions I've had with other leaders from across the region, and in particular making sure that we can try and get the Rafah crossing open. That will ease the humanitarian situation. That's why I prioritised speaking with President Sisi of Egypt early on last week to talk about that, and we will continue to do everything we can to alleviate the humanitarian situation on the ground, including moving some of our Royal Navy assets into the region who can provide further support as required.
We're also deeply concerned by the dire and worsening humanitarian crisis in Gaza. Canada is calling for unimpeded humanitarian access and a humanitarian corridor so that essential aid like food, fuel, and water can be delivered to civilians in Gaza. It is imperative that this happen.
No supplies have come into Gaza since the 7th of October. Nothing. No fuel, no food, no water, no other types of assistance. No supplies have gotten into Gaza since the 7th of October. That I can confirm. Not for UNRWA and not for other UN agencies. There continues to be no water for the vast majority of the population in Gaza. We're talking about 2 million people in the Gaza Strip who do not have water. And water is running out, and water is life, and life is running out of Gaza. So we have not had any information or any updates.
Yesterday, I saw my baby on television. I saw she's alive, and I saw that she was. I heard before rumors that she was shot in the shoulder or in the leg. So I can see she was shot in her shoulder. I see she had an operation. She looks very terrified. She looks like she's in big pain, and I can see that she's saying what they tell her to say, but I can see that she's stable. I can see she needs medical care. I didn't know she's dead or alive until yesterday. All I knew is that she might be kidnapped. I'm begging the world to bring my baby back home.
I am now in Gaza. I only ask that someone can get me back home as soon as possible. To my family, my parents, my siblings, please, get us out of here as soon as possible.
Now she's in Gaza. And she's not the only one. There are many children who went to this party. There are many babies and children and old people and Holocaust survivors that were kidnapped, that their houses were burned. This is a crime against humanity, and we should all gather and stop this terror and bring everybody back home.
The Pentagon has deployed 2 aircraft carriers to the eastern Mediterranean, the Ford carrier and the Eisenhower carrier, along with their supporting ships. Washington says these massive warships are intended to send a message to the region as war rages on between its ally Israel and Iran-backed Palestinian militants Hamas. Here's a closer look at what that means. The Gerald R. Ford carrier is the U.S.'s newest aircraft carrier and the world's largest. It holds 5,000 sailors, a nuclear reactor, and an arsenal of missiles used to counter drones and aircraft. It can also hold more than 75 military aircraft, including fighter jets, and comes along with several supporting warships. The nuclear-powered Dwight Eisenhower Carrier Strike Group first carried out operations during Iraq's invasion of Kuwait. It has 5,000 sailors and can carry up to 9 squadrons of aircraft, like fighter jets, helicopters, and those capable of carrying out intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance operations. The carriers would bolster Washington's presence in a region that already hosts a number of U.S. military ships, planes, and troops. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said on Sunday the aircraft carriers are not meant to be a provocation but a deterrence to ensure the conflict does not expand throughout the region. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin called them a sign of, quote, our resolve to deter any state or non-state actor seeking to escalate this war. But it might not be seen that way to others. Turkey, a long supporter of a two-state solution, has said the ships are meant to commit, quote, serious massacres in the Gaza Strip. And Iran has already threatened significant damages to the U.S. should the war escalate.
International law requires that any lawful temporary evacuation by Israel, as the occupying power, of an area on the basis of the security of the population or imperative military reasons must be accompanied by the provision of proper accommodation for all evacuees, undertaken under satisfactory conditions of hygiene, health, safety, and nutrition. There appears to have been no attempt by Israel to ensure this for the 1.1 million civilians ordered to move. We're concerned that this order, combined with the imposition of a complete siege on Gaza, may not be considered as lawful temporary evacuation and would therefore amount to a forcible transfer of civilians in breach of international law.
You know, right now, of course, that means that what we are doing is basically stretched, where our food supplies inside Gaza are running really short. But in the meantime, food supplies are being stockpiled in the Egyptian city of El Arish and close to the Gaza border to be dispatched as soon as the border, access is granted. So WFP, we call for unimpeded access, safe passage for desperately needed humanitarian supplies into Gaza. We've mobilized around over 300 tons of food that are either at or on the way to the Egyptian border in Rafah. That's enough to feed around 250,000 people for 1 week.
We know from experience, tragically, will come with all kinds of health issues. Particularly is our concern, of course, for those who are already most vulnerable. People who may already be sick or weakened or injured, and so on and so forth. If you take away from them their basis for survival, they are likely to die first, including children and infants.